They said the shot was impossible. They said a woman couldn't make it. They were wrong on both counts. 3,400 meters. That's just over 2 miles of empty air between a rifle and its target. 2 miles of wind that changes direction every 100 yards. 2 miles of elevation drop that turns ballistics into guesswork. 2 miles of distance where a single degree of error means missing by 20 feet. Sarah Mitchell had made harder shots. The ridge was crumbling beneath her. She could feel it. Every time the wind gusted, and it gusted constantly at 45 miles per hour, loose shale shifted under her prone body. The mountain was eating itself from the inside out, and she was lying on top of it like an offering. Her rifle was a custom .338 Lapua Magnum. She'd built it herself over 3 years, piece by piece, modification by modification. The stock was carbon fiber shaped to her shoulder. The barrel was hand-lapped cold hammer forged steel that could put 5 rounds through the same hole at 1,000 meters. The scope was German glass that cost more than most cars. She knew every scratch on it, every imperfection, every quirk of its personality. The wind screamed past her position. Sarah's eyes never left the compound below. Through her scope, she could see the SEAL team moving into position, 8 shadows against darker shadows. They were good, professional, careful. They were about to die. Sarah's finger rested beside the trigger guard. Not on it, never on it until the moment came. That was discipline. That was control. That was the difference between a shooter and a sniper. Her heart beat 62 times per minute. She trained it down from 78 over 4 years. Every beat was a window. Every space between beats was an opportunity. The photo in her chest pocket pressed against her ribs. She couldn't see it, but she didn't need to. The image was burned into her memory. 2 faces, brother and sister, Sarah and David Mitchell. The photo was 4 years old. David had been alive when it was taken. He wasn't alive anymore. Sarah's breathing was mechanical. 4 counts in, hold for 7, 8 counts out. The rhythm slowed her heart, calmed her nervous system, made her body a platform instead of a variable. She'd learned that from David. She'd learned everything from David. "Storm!" The radio crackled in her ear. Colonel William Harrison's voice. Call sign Bull, 67 years old and still the most stubborn man Sarah had ever met. "You're tensing. I can see it from here." Sarah didn't respond. She exhaled slowly, letting her shoulders drop a fraction of an inch. "That's better." Bull was 30 meters behind her, tucked into a crevice with a spotting scope, far enough back that his position was stable, close enough that his voice was steady in her ear. "Remember Berlin." Berlin, 1987. Bull's legendary shot, 2,100 meters through falling snow to take out a Soviet sniper who was killing defectors at the wall. One bullet, one impossibility, one moment that changed the Cold War. Sarah had heard the story 100 times. She'd never get tired of it. "Wind shifting," Bull said. His voice had the texture of gravel and whiskey. 40 years of cigarettes and worse. "Gusting 42 to 48 knots, coming from your 11 o'clock. Adjust 3.2 mils right." Sarah's fingers moved on the scope. Muscle memory. No thought required. Below, the SEAL team reached the compound wall. Shadow 6 Lieutenant James Reeves went over first. Smooth, silent. The rest followed like water. Sarah tracked them through her scope. Professional interest. These men were good, really good. Reeves moved like his father, same economy of motion, same tactical awareness. His father had served under Bull in Desert Storm, 33 years ago. When men fought in deserts instead of mountains. When the enemy wore uniforms instead of blending into civilian populations. Different war, same principles. The SEAL team disappeared into the compound. Sarah's scope swept the surrounding area. She was looking for problems, looking for threats, looking for anything that would turn this simple extraction into a bloodbath. She found it. Movement on the east ridge, then the north. Then coming up from the valley below, Sarah's blood went cold. "Bull," she said quietly, "we have a problem." "I see it." His voice was tight. 40-plus hostiles, they were waiting. Trap. The word hung in the air between them, unspoken but understood. Someone had talked. Someone always talked. And now 8 of America's best were walking into an ambush that would kill them all. Sarah's finger moved to the trigger. Stand by, Bull said. Let them spring it. We need to see the full picture. Every instinct in Sarah's body screamed to take the shot, to drop the first target, to start the chaos that might give the SEAL team a chance. But Bull was right. If she fired now without knowing all the angles, she might doom them instead of save them. So she waited. Waiting was harder than shooting. The lights came on all at once, floodlights, spotlights. The compound lit up like noon in the middle of the night. The SEAL team was caught in the open, exposed, surrounded. 42 hostiles poured out of concealment. They'd been hiding, waiting. They knew exactly where the Americans would be and exactly when they'd arrive. Sarah heard the first shots, saw Corporal Michael Cooper go down hard, shrapnel from a grenade. His leg opened up like a flower. Arterial spray painted the ground black in the harsh light. Storm Shadow 6, Reeves' voice cracked through the radio. Controlled panic, professional desperation. We are compromised, multiple hostiles, 3 sides, request immediate fire support. Sarah's world narrowed to the scope, to the targets, to the mathematics of death. 42 enemies, 20 seconds, 5,400 meters of combined engagement range across multiple targets. Impossible. She'd built a career on impossible. Bull, she said. Targets, engage. His voice was steel. I'll call them, you drop them. Sarah's heart rate slowed to 58 beats per minute. Her breathing stopped entirely. In the space between heartbeats, in the moment between breaths, she became something else. She became Storm. But that came later. First came the ghosts. 4 years earlier, Sarah Mitchell had been a different person. She'd been 24 years old, national shooting champion, 3 years running. She could put 10 rounds through a playing card at 1,000 yards. She'd won every competition she'd entered. She was the best pure shooter her instructors had ever seen, and she'd been happy. Happiness was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. The phone call had come at 2 in the morning. Sarah had been cleaning her competition rifle, preparing for the national championships. 3 weeks away, she'd been practicing 12 hours a day. Her shoulder was bruised from recoil. Her fingers had calluses on the calluses. The phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. She wished she hadn't. Miss Mitchell. The voice had been professional, sympathetic, trained to deliver bad news. This is Captain Rodriguez from the United States Army. I'm calling about your brother, Private First Class David Mitchell. Sarah had known immediately. The tone, the formality, the way the officer's voice carried the weight of words he'd said too many times before. No, the word came out flat, empty. It wasn't denial, it was refusal. Reality could not be this. I'm deeply sorry to inform you that your brother was killed in action 3 days ago during an attack on Forward Operating Base Keating. The rifle had fallen from Sarah's hands. She'd built it, customized it, loved it. It hit the ground and she didn't care. He died. The question was stupid, unnecessary, but her brain couldn't process the information any other way. Your brother showed extraordinary courage. He held a defensive corridor for 11 minutes while 23 civilians evacuated. He saved many lives. Heroic, brave, courageous, extraordinary, dead. David had been 20 years old, just a kid, too young, too idealistic, too eager to serve his country. Sarah had tried to talk him out of enlisting. They had fought about it. Harsh words. Words she'd give anything to take back now. Words that echoed in her skull every night when she tried to sleep. You're making a mistake, she'd told him. The military will chew you up and spit you out. Someone has to protect people, Sar, David had said. His voice had been calm, certain. Someone has to stand between the wolves and the sheep. I want to be that someone. You'll get yourself killed. Maybe, but I'll die knowing I mattered. He'd been right about that, at least. The funeral was full military honors. Flag-draped coffin, 21-gun salute. Taps played on a bugle that sounded like grief made audible. They'd given Sarah a folded flag, presented it with dignity and respect, told her that a grateful nation would never forget her brother's sacrifice. She'd taken the flag, taken the Medal of Honor they'd awarded David posthumously, taken all the symbols of honor and duty and sacrifice. She'd put them in a drawer, unopened, untouched. Then she'd enlisted. The recruiter had looked at her file with something approaching awe. National champion shooter. Perfect scores on every accuracy test. 20/20 vision. Steady hands, high intelligence. What do you want to do? He'd asked. Sniper school, Sarah had said. I want to kill the people who kill soldiers like my brother. The recruiter had paused. That's not really how we phrase it in the recruitment materials. I don't care how you phrase it. That's what I'm here for. 6 weeks later, she'd shipped out to basic training. She'd been the only woman in her sniper school class. The instructors had treated her with polite skepticism. The other students had treated her with outright hostility. Women didn't belong in combat roles, they said. Women didn't have the physical strength, the emotional discipline, the killer instinct. Sarah had graduated top of her class, set 3 range records, never missed a shot. The hostility had turned to grudging respect, then to actual respect, then to something approaching awe. They'd called her Ice Queen, said she was cold, mechanical, without emotion or humanity. They weren't wrong. Sarah had turned herself into a weapon, filed away every soft edge, every vulnerability, every connection that might make her hesitate when the moment came to take a life. She'd become exactly what David had died fighting for. A protector, a guardian, a person who stood between wolves and sheep. But she'd done it alone, always alone. She'd pushed away every attempt at friendship, every offer of partnership, every gesture of connection. Alone meant no one else could die. Alone meant no one else could disappoint her. Alone meant she controlled every variable, until she'd met Bull. Fort Bliss, Texas, 2 years after David's death. Advanced sniper school, the place where good shooters became great snipers. Sarah had been running impossible shot drills. Extreme distance, extreme elevation, extreme wind. The instructors kept raising the difficulty until students failed. That's how they found limits. Sarah didn't fail. 1,800 meters, 2,000, 2,200, 2,500. She kept hitting targets that shouldn't have been hittable. The instructors kept looking at each other with expressions that mixed disbelief and concern. Who taught you to shoot? One of them had asked. My brother, Sarah had said. That was all she'd said. That was all she'd needed to say. Colonel William Harrison had been observing from the tower. Retired 3 years, distinguished career spanning 4 decades. Cold War operations, Desert Storm, Bosnia, Afghanistan, Iraq. 47 students trained, 0 killed in action. Until David Mitchell. Bull had come down from the tower, walked across the range, stood next to Sarah's shooting position. You shoot like someone with something to prove, he'd said. Sarah had looked up at him, seen the weathered face, the silver hair, the eyes that had seen too much and remembered all of it. I don't need commentary, she'd said. No, but you need training. I'm top of my class, set 3 records this month. I don't need training. Bull had smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. You're very good, but you're not excellent. And the difference between very good and excellent is survival. Sarah had returned to her rifle, dismissed him. She didn't need old men telling her about her limitations. I knew your brother, Bull had said quietly. Sarah's hands had frozen on her weapon. David Mitchell trained him in advanced marksmanship 2 years before he deployed. Smart kid, great instincts, best student I'd had in 10 years. You're the one who wasn't there, Sarah had said. Her voice was flat, cold. You're the one who let him die alone. Bull had taken the accusation without flinching. Yes, the honesty had thrown her. She'd expected excuses, justifications, the usual military bureaucracy of plausible deniability. I retired 6 months before David deployed, Bull had continued. I wasn't in theater, couldn't provide overwatch, couldn't be there when he needed support. I've lived with that for 2 years. Good, Sarah had said. You should. Probably, but hating me won't bring him back. And pushing everyone away won't protect you. I don't need protection. I need to be left alone. Bull had studied her for a long moment. David talked about you. Last conversation we had. Said his sister was the best natural shooter he'd ever seen. Said someone needed to train you right. Make sure you survived what he didn't. Sarah had felt something crack inside her chest. He said that Bull had pulled out a worn piece of paper. David's handwriting, Sarah recognized it immediately. If something happens to me, the note read, find Sarah, train her. She'll resist, train her anyway. She has the gift, don't let her waste it being angry. Sarah had read it 3 times. Her vision had blurred. I don't want your help, she'd said. Noted, I'm giving it anyway. That had been the beginning. Sarah had resisted for months, fought every lesson, questioned every technique, pushed back against every attempt to make her part of something larger than herself. Bull had been patient, relentless. He'd worn down her defenses the way water wears down stone, not through force, through persistence. He'd taught her things David never could have. Advanced ballistics, environmental reading, mental discipline, the 1,000 small details that separated accurate shooters from legendary snipers. More importantly, he'd taught her that being alone wasn't strength. It was just alone. The call sign had come during a training operation in Kandahar. Sarah had been providing overwatch for a convoy extraction. Dust storm had reduced visibility to arm's length. Hostile force had attacked during the storm. 20 targets, 60 seconds. Conditions that made shooting next to impossible. Sarah had dropped 14 confirmed kills without missing once, shot through dust that blinded everyone else, used the chaos as cover, turned environmental disaster into tactical advantage. When the storm cleared, Bull had looked at her with something approaching reverence. You're not Ice Queen anymore, he'd said. You're Storm. The name had stuck, but Sarah had never fully let Bull in, never fully trusted that he wouldn't disappear like David had, never fully believed that connection was anything but weakness waiting to kill you. Now, lying on a crumbling ridge 3,000 meters from 42 targets, who were about to murder 8 American soldiers, Sarah was about to find out if she'd been right. The mission briefing had been 12 hours earlier. Sarah had entered the operations center at 0600. The room was full of people she didn't know and didn't want to know. SEAL team members, intelligence officers, command staff, too many bodies in too small a space. She'd found a corner, stayed there, waited for the briefing to start. The SEALs had noticed her. They always noticed. Female sniper, legendary accuracy, the call sign that had spread through special operations like wildfire. One of them had muttered something. Sarah hadn't caught the words, but she'd caught the tone. Skepticism, doubt, the usual. That's Storm, another voice slightly louder. She's responsible for 63 confirmed kills in 22 months. Lieutenant James Reeves had cut him off. His voice had carried authority, command. Show respect. The room had gone quiet. Sarah had glanced at Reeves. He'd nodded at her. Professional acknowledgement between professionals. His father had served under Bull in Desert Storm. 33 years ago. Different generation. Same warrior coach. General Matheson had started the briefing. Gentlemen, Captain Mitchell. He'd nodded at Sarah. We have actionable intelligence on a high-value target. Cartel leadership meeting with foreign fighters. Weapons deal, possibly terrorist coordination. He'd brought up satellite imagery. Compound in the Sierra Madre Mountains, Texas-Mexico border region. Isolated, heavily defended. SEAL Team 7 will infiltrate at 0300. Confirm identity. Extract or eliminate as circumstances dictate. Standard operation. Sarah had done dozens of these. She'd studied the terrain, the approach vectors, the defensive positions. Then Matheson had brought up the overwatch position. Sarah's heart had sunk. The ridge was 3,400 meters from the compound. Unstable geology, exposed position, wind speeds that would make shooting nearly impossible. Captain Mitchell will provide overwatch from here. Matheson had indicated the ridge position. Someone in the room had laughed. Sir, with respect, that's an impossible position. Which is why we have Storm, Matheson had said. Sarah had studied the position, calculated angles, wind speeds, elevation differences. Every variable screamed danger. The ridge was actively crumbling. One strong gust of wind might trigger a collapse. I can make it work, she'd said. Not alone. Matheson had looked uncomfortable. We're assigning Colonel Harrison as tactical advisor. Sarah's jaw had tightened. I work alone, sir. Not this time. The ridge is suicide without his mountain experience. Colonel Harrison has worked impossible terrain from Afghanistan to Bosnia. He'll be your spotter." "I don't need a spotter." "Captain Mitchell." Matheson's voice had gone hard. "This is not a negotiation. Colonel Harrison will accompany you to the ridge position. He will provide environmental analysis and tactical coordination. You will follow his recommendations regarding position stability and safety protocols. Is that understood?" Sarah had wanted to argue, wanted to refuse, wanted to walk out and let them find someone else. But 8 men would die without overwatch. 8 families would get phone calls at 2 in the morning. 8 brothers, fathers, sons would come home in flag-draped coffins. She couldn't let that happen. "Understood, sir." After the briefing, Sarah had found Bull in the equipment room. He'd been checking spotting scopes. 67 years old and his hands were still steady. "I don't need a babysitter," Sarah had said. Bull hadn't looked up from his equipment. "Good, because I'm not babysitting. I'm keeping you alive." "Like you kept David alive?" The words had come out harsher than she'd intended. They'd hung in the air between them like a physical thing. Bull had finally looked at her. His eyes had been sad, understanding. "That's fair, but I'm going. Deal with it." Sarah had realized something in that moment. Bull wasn't asking permission, wasn't negotiating. He was simply stating fact. For the first time since David died, someone was refusing to let her push them away. "Fine," she'd said, "but stay out of my way." Wouldn't dream of interfering. They'd spent the next 6 hours prepping. Bull had insisted on reviewing Sarah's equipment, checking her rifle, verifying her calculations. "You're missing something," he'd said, examining her scope settings. "I'm not missing anything." Bull had made an adjustment. 0.2 mils, barely perceptible. "Berlin 87, I was 0.3 mils off on my initial calculation. Missed my first shot, had to recalculate under fire. Almost cost me the target." He'd looked at Sarah. "You're brilliant, best natural shooter I've ever seen. But you're not perfect. None of us are. That's why we work in teams." Sarah had wanted to argue, but the adjustment had been correct. She'd been 0.3 mils off in her calculation. "How did you know?" she'd asked. 40 years of making mistakes and learning from them. That evening, they'd gone to the range. Sarah had needed to shoot, needed to feel the rifle, needed to center herself before the mission. Bull had watched from the shadows. She'd known he was there, had felt his presence like a physical weight. After 30 rounds, all perfect scores, she'd stopped. "You're shooting like you're punishing yourself," Bull had said, stepping into the light. "Maybe I am." "For what you didn't kill David?" Sarah had turned to face him. "I didn't save him either." Bull had walked closer. "Tell me about David." "Why?" "Because you've been carrying him alone for 4 years, and that weight is going to get you killed." Sarah had been silent for a long time. Then the words had started coming. She couldn't stop them. "He called me the night before his last mission, said he was scared. First time he'd ever admitted being afraid of anything. She'd never told anyone this, never spoken these words out loud. I told him fear was normal, that he'd be fine, that his training would keep him safe." Her voice had cracked. "I was wrong." Bull had been quiet, listening, not judging. "He wanted to be a teacher," Sarah had continued. "After his service, high school history, he loved teaching, loved helping people understand things. He was good at it," Bull had said softly. "Best student I ever had, patient, thoughtful, asked the right questions." Sarah had looked at him. "He never told me he was your best." Bull had pulled out another worn paper. "Last conversation we had, he said his sister was better. Told me Sarah has the gift. Make sure someone trains her right. Make sure she comes home." Sarah's world had shifted. "He said that somehow he knew he might not make it back. And he wanted you protected. Not by hiding, by being the best." Sarah had taken the paper. Read David's handwriting. Her brother's words from beyond the grave. "I thought I was doing this for revenge," she'd said quietly. "Maybe you were, but David wanted you to do it for protection, for keeping others safe, for making sure no one else's little brother dies waiting for help that never comes." Sarah had felt something break inside her chest, something that had been holding her together through sheer willpower and rage. "I don't know how to let go of the anger," she had said. "You don't have to. You channel it. Tomorrow you channel it into saving 8 lives, into honoring David by being what he asked you to be. They'd stood in silence for a long moment. Then Bull had started coughing. Hard. Wet. He'd turned away, but Sarah had seen the blood on his hand. Bull, she'd said. What's wrong? He'd wiped his hand. Something that matters more than tomorrow's mission. Don't lie to me. What's wrong? Bull had met her eyes. Stage 3 lung cancer. 6 months prognosis. Maybe. Sarah's blood had gone cold. And you're going on this mission, especially because of this mission, to make sure you come back, to keep my promise to him. That's insane. Probably, but I'm going anyway. You can accept my help or fight me on it. Either way, I'll be there. Sarah had realized something in that moment. For 4 years, she'd been alone. By choice. By design. By desperate need to control every variable and protect herself from more loss. But Bull wasn't giving her that choice. He was forcing connection. Forcing partnership. Forcing her to let someone in, whether she wanted to or not. And for the first time since David died, Sarah had felt something other than anger. She'd felt hope. The mission launch happened at 0200. Helicopters took the SEAL team to their insertion point. Sarah and Bull hiked to the ridge. 3 hours of climbing through mountain terrain and darkness. Bull had struggled with the altitude. Sarah had seen it. The way his breathing labored. The way he'd had to stop more frequently than the terrain warranted. She'd helped him. Offered her arm when the trail got steep. Slowed her pace to match his. Small gestures. Unfamiliar gestures. Acts of care. They'd reached the ridge at 0000. First light was still an hour away. Time to set up. Time to prepare. Time to become what the mission needed them to be. The ridge was exactly as bad as intelligence had indicated. Worse, maybe. Sarah could feel it shifting under her weight. Every gust of wind sent small rocks tumbling into the valley below. This is suicide, she'd said. Yes, Bull had agreed, but it's also the only position that gives you clear lines of sight to the entire compound. Sometimes the best option is still terrible. They'd set up carefully, Sarah prone with her rifle, Bull 30 meters back with the spotting scope and radio equipment, far enough that his position was stable, close enough that his voice was clear in her ear. Sarah had gone through her ritual, the one she performed before every shot, every mission, every moment when lives depended on her precision. She'd touched the photo in her chest pocket. David's face, smiling, young, alive in that frozen moment 4 years ago. I see you, she'd whispered to the photo, to her brother, to the ghost she carried everywhere. I'm still here, still fighting, still trying to be what you needed me to be. Bull's voice had crackled in her ear. Target area is clear. SEAL team is moving into position. Sarah had settled into her shooting position. Let her body become a platform. Let her mind become a calculator. Let everything else fall away except wind and distance and mathematics. Through her scope, she'd watched the SEAL team approach. Professional, careful. Reeves leading from the front the way his father had. Then she'd seen the movement on the ridges. The shadows that weren't shadows. The positioning that spoke of ambush and betrayal and murder. Bull, she'd said, we have a problem. And 42 enemies had revealed themselves in the harsh floodlights of the compound. Reeves's voice in her ear, desperate, controlled, professional even in crisis. Storm Shadow 6, we are compromised. Sarah's finger moved to the trigger. Bull's voice was steel in her ear. Targets, engage. And Sarah Mitchell callsign Storm became exactly what her brother had asked her to be. A protector, a guardian, a woman who stood between wolves and sheep with nothing but skill and will and a rifle that had never let her down. Target 1, Bull called. 3157 meters. RPG operator. Wind 42 knots from 11 o'clock. Adjust 3.2 mils right. On my mark, 3, 2, 1. Send it. Sarah squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. The recoil absorbed by muscle memory and 4 years of training. The bullet flew through night air at 2,800 feet per second, through wind that wanted to push it off course, through air density that changed with every 100 meters of elevation. The bullet arrived 3.7 seconds after Sarah fired it. The RPG operator's throat opened like a flower. red mist in the harsh lights. The rocket launcher fired wild as he fell. The rocket spiraled into the sky, exploded harmlessly above the compound. Hit, Bull confirmed. Target 2, 3183 meters. Machine gunner, same win. Adjust .4 mils left. Send it. Sarah's hands moved, adjusted, fired. The world became rhythm. Bull's voice calling targets. Sarah's rifle answering. Death delivered with precision and mercy. Because the mercy was for the SEAL team, the 8 men who deserved to go home, who deserved to see their families again, who deserved to live. The mercy wasn't for the 42 men who'd set this trap, who'd waited in darkness to murder American soldiers, who'd chosen this path. They'd made their choice. Sarah was simply delivering the consequence. Target 3, Target 4, Target 5. The killing had begun, and Storm had arrived. Target 6 went down with a hole through his chest. The bullet continued through body armor, through flesh, through the machine gun he'd been setting up. The weapon sparked and died. The man fell across it. Sarah didn't pause, didn't celebrate, didn't feel anything except the rhythm of breathing and shooting and Bull's voice in her ear calling the next death. Target 7, 3091 meters. Sniper in window, second floor. Adjust 2 mils up for elevation, send it. Her scope found the window, found the shadow behind it, found the glint of glass that marked another scope, another shooter. Someone trying to do to the SEAL team what Sarah was doing to his people. She fired first. The window exploded. The sniper's head snapped back. He fell into darkness. 8 down, 34 to go. The enemy was scattering now, panic setting in. They couldn't locate her. 3,000 meters was beyond most rifle ranges, beyond most people's ability to conceptualize. They were dying and they didn't know from where. Sarah tracked targets methodically. No wasted motion, no hesitation. This was what she'd trained for, what she'd become. A machine that turned a breathing into death. Target 9, Target 10, Target 11. Each shot was a prayer. Each hit was an answer. Each kill was a promise kept to David, to Bull, to herself. She would not let them die. The compound was chaos now. Men running, men firing blindly at shadows, men realizing too late that they'd walked into something they couldn't survive. Sarah found 3 hostiles clustered behind a vehicle, using the engine block for cover. Smart positioning, the angle was bad. Target 12 through 14, behind technical truck. Can't penetrate engine block. Adjust for fuel tank. High explosive risk. Send it. Sarah moved her point of aim down, not at the men, at the vehicle's fuel tank. The rifle barked. The bullet punched through thin metal. Gasoline ignited in an orange fireball that lit up the night like a second sunrise. The 3 men stumbled into the open, burning, screaming. Sarah put them down before they took 2 steps. Mercy shots. Quick deaths instead of slow ones. The ridge groaned beneath her. Sarah felt it shift, felt the mountain losing its grip on itself, felt the inevitability of collapse like a countdown in her bones. Bull, she said quietly, the ridge. I know, keep shooting, they still need you. Target 18, 19, 20, 21, a group trying to retreat through an alley. Sarah dropped them in sequence. Each one falling before the next understood the danger. Dominoes made of flesh and blood and choices. 22, 23, 24. The smoke cleared for a moment. Through her scope, Sarah saw Reeves. He had his head up now, staring toward her position. She couldn't see his expression at this distance, but she could imagine it. Disbelief, hope, confusion. Who was killing 42 men to save 8 Storm was? That's who. 25, 26, 27. The pattern was established now. Bull called targets, Sarah executed. They worked together like a single organism. His eyes, her hands, 40 years of experience combined with 28 years of life and 4 years of rage turned into purpose. This was what partnership looked like. This was what David had wanted for her. Not isolation, not anger. Connection that made her stronger instead of weaker. 28 through 31. A squad mounting a technical truck with a heavy gun. Driver first, then gunner, then 3 infantry climbing into the bed. The truck crashed into a wall, fire and twisted metal. 32, 33. Two snipers who'd finally located her general position. Too late. Far too late. Sarah's bullets found them before they could finish aiming. Their scopes exploded. Their bodies fell. The ridge shifted violently. Sarah felt herself sliding. 6 inches down and to the left. Her rifle muzzle dipped. She scrambled for purchase on shale that was turning to sand beneath her. Sarah, Bull's voice was sharp with fear. Real fear, not tactical concern, personal terror. I'm okay, she said. Found stable ground. Reset her position. Continuing engagement. Negative, fall back. The ridge is going. Not until they're clear. Through her scope, she could see the SEAL team starting to move, using the chaos, using the impossible suppression she was providing. They were carrying Cooper, moving toward extraction. They needed 30 more seconds. Sarah had 8 targets left. 34, 35, 36, 37. The remaining hostiles were breaking now, running, 4 men in a desperate charge toward the SEAL team, trying to close distance, trying to force close combat where Sarah's rifle was useless. They made it 6 meters. Sarah dropped all 4 in rapid succession. Her rifle was hot now, the barrel radiating heat, the action cycling faster than thought. 2 targets left, numbers 41 and 42. They stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. Their entire force wiped out in less than 30 seconds by an invisible enemy. Sarah's crosshairs found the first one. She squeezed the trigger. He fell. The last man turned to run. Sarah's final shot took him in the back of the head at 2,891 meters. Silence fell over the battlefield. Sarah's breathing was ragged now. The adrenaline wearing off. Beneath it was exhaustion. Pain. The wound in her side that she'd been carrying for 3 days since an earlier ambush. It had reopened. She could feel wetness spreading across her ribs. Storm to Shadow 6. Her voice was steady despite everything. You're clear. Move now while you have the window. Reeves's response was immediate. Storm, what is your position? We are coming for you. Sarah's training said to accept, to give coordinates, to let them extract her like any other operator. But the ridge was crumbling. They'd never reach her before full collapse. And Bull was here, exposed, vulnerable. Negative, and she said, I'm 3 clicks northwest on unstable terrain. You can't reach me before dark, and you need to extract Cooper now. Storm, we don't leave people behind. I'm not people. I'm Overwatch. Your job is the mission. My job is getting you home. Mission complete. Now go. She could hear Reeves wanting to argue, could hear the conflict in his silence. Orders versus honor, duty versus warrior code. The mountain made the decision for them. The ridge section where Sarah was positioned gave way with a sound like thunder. Not the crack of breaking rock, the deep rumble of geological surrender. Sarah was falling before she understood what was happening. 20 feet of vertical drop through empty air. She grabbed for her anchor line. Rope burned through her gloves. She was trying to find purchase on a mountainside that was coming apart like wet sand. She hit an outcrop. Hard. Felt ribs crack. Felt her left arm break. Felt pain so sharp it whited out her vision for 3 full seconds. When her vision cleared, she was on a narrow ledge, wedged between 2 massive boulders. Her rifle was gone. Tumbled into the valley below. Her radio was smashed. Dead. Above her, the entire ridge section where she'd been positioned moments ago collapsed. Hundreds of tons of rock thundered into the valley. Dust rose in a choking cloud. Sarah lay there tasting blood, trying to breathe through broken ribs. Her left arm bent at an angle that left arms should never bend. But her right hand still worked, still reached for her sidearm, still held the weapon steady even though her world was pain and vertigo. Footsteps on rock above her. Coming fast, coming down. Sarah aimed her pistol at the sound, finger on trigger, ready to kill whoever was coming. Bull's face appeared over the edge of the boulder. Don't shoot, he said. His voice was tight with pain and fear and relief. It's me. Sarah lowered the pistol slightly. You should have stayed back. Your position was stable. Your position was falling apart. I came for you. That's stupid. You could have died. Bull climbed down to her ledge, moving carefully. The rock was still unstable, still shifting. One wrong move and they'd both fall. Yes, he said simply, but you're not facing this alone. He reached her position, saw her arm, her ribs, the blood spreading across her tactical vest. His face went pale. "How bad?" he asked. "Bad enough. But I'll live." Bull pulled out medical supplies, started treating her wounds. His hands were steady despite the situation, despite the mountain actively trying to kill them, despite everything. Sarah watched him work. This man who'd come back for her, who'd climbed down unstable rock to reach her, who was dying of cancer but refused to let her die alone. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, vulnerable, all the walls she'd built crumbling like the ridge. "Why come back?" Bull looked at her. His eyes were sad and determined and full of something Sarah hadn't seen directed at her in 4 years. Care. Actual human care. "Because some heroes arrive like storms," he said. "And when the storm saves you, you save the storm back." Sarah's laugh was almost silent, cut short by pain. "That's terrible poetry." "Yeah, but it's true." He finished bandaging her ribs, started working on a splint for her arm. The movement made Sarah gasp, white-hot pain that made her vision narrow. "Easy," Bull said. "I know it hurts, but we need to stabilize this before we move." "Bull," Sarah's voice was strained. "I saw the blood earlier. How long do you have?" Bull's hands paused. 6 months, maybe, if I'm lucky and careful. "And you came on this mission anyway." "Especially because of this mission." He resumed working on the splint, to make sure David's sister came home, to keep my promise. Sarah felt tears on her face. She couldn't remember the last time she'd cried, couldn't remember the last time she'd let herself feel anything except anger and purpose. "I don't want to lose you too," she said. Bull finished the splint, looked at her with infinite gentleness. "You won't lose me. I'll be here." He tapped her chest over her heart. "And here." He tapped her rifle hand. "Everything I know, everything I am, it's yours now, whether I'm here or not." Gunfire echoed across the valley. Mortar fire, the sound of explosions. Both of them looked up. "They tracked us," Bull said. "Reinforcements." Sarah's blood went cold. "The SEAL team. They're coming for us. Reeves won't leave without trying." "He'll get himself killed." "Probably, but that's what we do. We're stupid enough to care." Bull was already moving, trying to help Sarah stand, but the ledge was too small, too unstable. Any significant movement might trigger another collapse. "You need to go," Sarah said. "Get to stable ground. I'll follow when I can." "Not happening." "Bull, that's an order." "I'm retired. Your orders don't mean shit to me." He smiled grimly. "We're in this together. That's what partnership means. We survive together or we don't survive. Those are the options." More mortar fire. Closer now. The mountain shook with each impact. Sarah heard voices, American accents, Reeves, Hawk, coming up the mountain in the darkness, coming into a kill zone to extract two operators they barely knew. "They're going to die for us," Sarah said. "Maybe, or maybe we're going to live because of them. Funny how that works." Bull checked his own weapon. A pistol, limited ammunition. "Can you shoot with your right hand?" Sarah tested her grip. Pain flared, but she could hold the weapon steady. "Yes." "Then we hold this position. We provide what cover we can, and we trust that the people coming for us know what they're doing." Trust. Sarah had forgotten what that word meant, had spent 4 years avoiding it, running from it, building walls against it. Now she was trapped on a crumbling mountain with a dying man who'd risked everything to pull her from falling rock. And people she barely knew were climbing through hostile fire to save her. Trust wasn't a choice anymore. It was the only option left. "Okay," Sarah said. It was the hardest word she'd ever spoken. "Okay." Bull squeezed her shoulder. "That's my girl." Flashlight beams cut through the darkness below. Reeves and Hawk climbing fast. Too fast. Taking risks that would get them killed. Behind them, muzzle flashes. 30-plus hostiles. Maybe more. The survivors from the compound, plus reinforcements. Hunting the Americans. Seeking revenge for their dead. Sarah raised her pistol. Bull did the same. 2 shooters. Limited ammunition. Impossible odds. "Just like old times," Bull said. "I've never done this before." Not the specific situation, the general principle. Impossible odds. Refusing to quit. Trusting your team. Sarah sighted down her pistol, found a target in the darkness below. David would probably have something inspirational to say right now. David would tell you that heroes aren't fearless. They're just too stubborn to give up. That sounds like him. Learned it from him. Now I'm teaching it to you. That's how legacy works. The first hostile came into range. Sarah fired. Perfect headshot at 50 meters with a pistol in her offhand. The man dropped. Nice shot, Bull said. I had a good teacher. They fell into rhythm. Sarah and Bull, student and teacher, two shooters against an army, holding a position that couldn't be held, buying time that couldn't be bought, but doing it anyway, because that's what warriors did, because quitting wasn't an option, because somewhere below them, people they cared about were risking everything. And Sarah Mitchell, who'd spent 4 years alone, discovered that fighting with someone was better than fighting for someone. Reeves and Hawk reached for their position 10 minutes later. It felt like 10 hours. Both men were breathing hard, tactical gear covered in dust and blood, weapons up, professional despite the chaos. Storm, Reeves said, you look like hell. Feel worse. Sarah's voice was tight with pain. You shouldn't have come. Had to. Can't let legends die on mountains. Reeves assessed their position. Can you move? Not quickly. Left arm's broken. Ribs are cracked. I'll slow you down. Then we move slow. Reeves looked at Hawk. Think you can carry her? I can walk, Sarah said. You can't. Bull's voice was firm. Your ribs are barely stable. Put weight on that left side and you'll puncture a lung. Let them carry you. Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to prove she didn't need help, wanted to maintain the illusion of self-sufficiency that had kept her safe for 4 years. But the mountain was still collapsing. Enemies were still coming, and pride was going to get everyone killed. Okay, she said again. That word was getting easier each time. Hawk moved to her position. Carefully. The ledge could barely hold 2 people's weight. This is going to hurt, ma'am. Everything hurts. Do it. Hawk lifted her in a fireman's carry. Sarah bit back a scream as her ribs shifted. White-hot pain, vision going gray. But she stayed conscious, stayed focused. Bull was moving too, slower than he should. The cancer and the altitude and the stress were taking their toll. Reeves saw it, Bertis. Colonel, you need assistance. I need you to stop asking stupid questions and start moving. Bull's voice was sharp, command voice, the voice of 40 years telling young men what to do. They started down the mountain, moving as fast as the terrain allowed, which wasn't fast enough. Behind them, the hostile force was closing. Sarah could hear them, shouting in Spanish, coordinating. They had numbers. They had knowledge of terrain. They had every advantage except one. They didn't have the desperate determination of Americans who refused to leave their people behind. Mortar fire screamed overhead. Impact 50 meters upslope. Rock and shrapnel rained down. The mountain shook. Hawk stumbled, caught himself, kept moving. Sarah hung over his shoulder, her pistol in her good hand, watching their back trail, looking for targets. She found them. 3 hostiles coming fast, weapons up. Sarah fired, hit one. The other 2 scattered. Contact rear, she called out. Her voice was steady despite the pain and the motion and the impossibility of hitting anything while being carried over rough terrain. Reeves spun, fired controlled bursts, dropped another hostile. Keep moving, I'll cover. They reached a small ravine, natural cover, defensible position. Hawk set Sarah down, gently. She nearly screamed anyway. Bull collapsed beside her. His breathing was labored, wet, bad. Bull. Sarah grabbed his arm with her good hand. Talk to me. I'm fine. Just need a minute. But his face was gray. His lips had a blue tinge. Not fine. Not even close. Reeves was on the radio, calling for extraction, giving coordinates. His voice was calm but urgent. Shadow 3 to any station. We have Storm and Bull, both injured, need immediate exfil, multiple hostiles in pursuit. LZ is hot. Static. Then a new voice. Shadow 3, this is Rescue 6. We're inbound. ETA 15 minutes. Can you hold 15 minutes? Sarah looked at their ammunition, looked at Bull's labored breathing, looked at the hostiles gathering in the darkness around them. We don't have 15 minutes, she said quietly. Reeves met her eyes. He knew it too. They all knew it. But he keyed the radio anyway. Rescue 6 will be here. Just hurry. Sarah checked her pistol. 3 rounds left. Bull had 4. Reeves and Hawk had maybe 2 magazines between them. Not enough. Not nearly enough. The real storm arrived like a physical presence. Wind first, gusting 40 to 60 miles per hour. Then rain, cold, driving. Within minutes, it became a deluge that reduced visibility to arm's length. Sarah couldn't see the hostiles anymore, but she could hear them, moving through the storm, closing in. Contact front, Hawk called, fired 3 rounds. Multiple hostiles, 20 meters. The storm was supposed to be their enemy. Reduced visibility, made shooting impossible, turned the battlefield into chaos. But Sarah remembered Bull's words from Berlin, from that legendary shot through falling snow. You don't fight the environment, you become part of it. Lightning flashed. For 1 brilliant second, Sarah saw everything. The ravine, the approach vectors, the enemy positions. Darkness returned. Sarah held the image in her mind, mapped it, calculated it. Another lightning flash. She fired between the flashes, heard a scream. Hit. What the hell? Reeves stared at her. How did you lightning illumination? Wait for the flash. Memorize positions. Fire in the darkness between strikes. Bull's laugh was wet, pained, but genuine. That's my student, taking my Berlin technique and making it better. Lightning, darkness, fire. Lightning, darkness, fire. Sarah fell into a rhythm, using the storm as a tool instead of an obstacle. Each lightning flash gave her targets. Each darkness gave her cover. She was wounded, down to 3 rounds, trapped in a ravine with 4 other soldiers against 30-plus hostiles, and she was winning. Reeves caught on, started using the same technique. Then Hawk. 3 shooters using impossible conditions to turn the battlefield in their favor. 6 hostiles down in 2 minutes. Sarah's pistol clicked empty. I'm out, she said. Reeves tossed her his sidearm. Make it count. Sarah caught it one-handed, checked the magazine. 7 rounds. She'd make it count. The storm intensified, thunder so loud it was physical, rain so heavy it was like being underwater. And through it all, Sarah kept shooting, kept fighting, kept refusing to quit. Because Bull had taught her that impossible was just another word for not yet. Because David had taught her that heroes weren't fearless. Because she'd spent 4 years alone, and she'd finally learned that together was stronger. Reeves's radio crackled. Shadow 3 Rescue 6. We're 2 minutes out. Pop smoke. Negative smoke. Storm's too heavy. You won't see it? Reeves looked at Sarah. You got anything left? Sarah looked around their position, saw a structure 400 meters away through breaks in the rain. Church bell tower, old, stone, elevated. I need to move, she said. You can barely stand. I can climb, I can shoot. That tower gives overwatch of the entire area. I can clear the LZ for the helos. Bull grabbed her arm. Sarah, no, it's too exposed. You'll be a target. Sarah looked at him. This man who'd come for her, who'd taught her, who'd kept his promise to David even as cancer ate him from inside. You taught me that some shots have to be taken, she said gently. Even when they're impossible, especially when they're impossible. She stood. Pain flared through her ribs. Her broken arm hung useless, but her right hand was steady. Cover me, she said. I'm moving to the tower. Captain, Reeves's voice carried command. That's suicide. Maybe, but it's also our only shot. Sarah met his eyes. You came back for me. Now I'm making sure you all get out. That's how this works. We protect each other. She started moving before anyone could argue. Through the storm, through the pain, through every screaming instinct that said, stop, collapse, surrender. The tower was 400 meters away. Sarah ran, limped, staggered, whatever forward motion her body could manage. Enemy fire kicked up mud around her. She didn't stop. Lightning flashed. She saw muzzle flashes, fired at them, kept moving. Reached the tower, found the entrance, started climbing stairs that were barely intact. Each step was agony. Each breath was fire. She climbed anyway. Reached the bell chamber. Set up position. The storm raged around her, but the stone walls provided cover. Minimal cover, but better than nothing. From this height, she could see everything: the ravine where her team was pinned, the hostiles closing in, the approach vector for the helicopters. Lightning flashed. Sarah memorized enemy positions. Darkness. She fired. Lightning. Confirm hit. Darkness. Next target. 8 hostiles between her team and extraction. Sarah methodically eliminated them. 1 shot per target. No wasted ammunition. Professional killing from an amateur position by a wounded operator who refused to quit. The helicopters appeared through the storm. 2 Black Hawks. Flying conditions that should have grounded them. Coming anyway because Americans needed extraction. Sarah's radio crackled. Reeves must have given her his spare. "Storm, we see the birds. LZ is clear. Get down here." "Negative. Still have hostiles on your 6. Give me 30 seconds. Lightning. 3 more targets. Darkness. Sarah fired 3 times. Lightning, all 3 down. "Now you're clear. Go." She could see them loading into the helicopters, could see Bull being carried aboard, could see Hawk and Reeves covering the movement. An RPG team appeared on the eastern ridge, targeting the helicopters. Sarah's world went cold and clear. She had 2 rounds left. 2 rounds against 2 targets at 300 meters in a storm with a pistol and a broken arm. Impossible. She'd built a career on impossible. "Hawk," she said into the radio. Her voice was calm, certain. 10 o'clock, Eastern Ridge, RPG team, take them. She couldn't make the shot, but she could call it. She could trust. 3 seconds of silence. Then Hawk's rifle barked twice. The RPG team went down. "Got them," Hawk confirmed. "Storm, get to the bird." Sarah was already moving, down the stairs, out of the tower, running toward the helicopters through storm and chaos and pain that threatened to black her out with every step. Reeves saw her coming, extended his hand from the helicopter. "Come on." Sarah ran, reached the helicopter, grabbed Reeves' hand. He pulled her aboard. The Black Hawk lifted off just as another mortar round hit where they'd been standing, climbing through the storm, through rain and wind that should have been impossible to fly through. But impossible was relative, and Sarah Mitchell had redefined impossible twice in one night. She collapsed on the helicopter floor, breathing hard. Everything hurt. Everything. Bull was beside Barn, oxygen mask on, medic working on him, but his eyes were open, looking at her. "You did it," he said through the mask. His voice was barely audible over the rotors. "We did it," Sarah corrected. "Together." Bull smiled, closed his eyes. The helicopter climbed higher, away from the mountain, away from the killing ground, towards safety and medical care and survival. Sarah closed her own eyes. For the first time in 4 years, she wasn't alone. For the first time since David died, she'd let people in, and they'd saved her life, just like she'd saved theirs. That's what family did, blood or chosen. It didn't matter. They saved each other, even when it was impossible, especially when it was impossible. The warning system screamed through the helicopter cabin, high-pitched, insistent, the sound of technology detecting death. "RPG, RPG." The pilot's voice was tight with controlled fear. "Guided missile, it's tracking us." Sarah's eyes snapped open. She saw it through the open door, a rocket-propelled grenade climbing toward them, smoke trail like a finger pointing at their death, advanced military hardware, guided, locked on target. The pilot was already taking evasive action, banking hard, throwing the helicopter into maneuvers that made Sarah's broken ribs scream. But the missile was adjusting, following, patient and inevitable. Sarah's mind went cold and clear. She had seconds, maybe less. The mathematics of survival calculated themselves without conscious thought. Distance, velocity, wind speed, the helicopter's movement pattern, the missile's trajectory. One shot, one bullet, one impossibility. She grabbed the cargo strap with her good hand, pulled herself to the open door. The wind tore at her, tried to rip her out into empty air. Hawk grabbed her belt, held on, kept her anchored. Sarah raised Reeves' pistol. Her right hand was steady despite everything. Despite the pain, despite the broken body, despite the impossibility of what she was about to attempt. Bull's voice in her memory. Berlin, 1987, 2,100 meters through falling snow. The secret wasn't fighting the environment. The secret was becoming part of it. The helicopter banked left. The missile adjusted, closing, 200 meters, 150, 100. Sarah didn't aim at the missile itself. That would be genuinely impossible. The target was too small, too fast, too protected. She aimed at the tail fin, the guidance system, the weak point where engineering met physics and left a gap for miracles. Her world slowed down. Everything she'd learned, everything Bull had taught her, everything David had believed she could be, it all compressed into this single moment, this single shot, wind calculations, flight path, bullet drop, the helicopter's movement, the missile's trajectory. Her mind processed variables faster than thought, faster than fear. Sarah fired. The bullet caught the RPG's tail fin at an angle, just enough, just barely. The missile's flight path curved, wobbled. The guidance system fought to compensate, failed. The rocket spiraled out of control, exploded 200 meters away. A fireball in empty sky, brilliant and harmless. Sarah pulled herself back into the helicopter, every muscle shaking. Hawk was staring at her like she'd just walked on water. He couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't find words. Guidance fin, Sarah said. Her voice was steady, professional, like she shot down missiles every day. Easier target than the main body. The pilot's voice came through the intercom. Shaky, but professional. Whoever just saved my bird drinks are on me for life. Reeves was looking at Sarah with something approaching awe. That's the most Storm thing I've ever seen. Bull's eyes had opened during the chaos. He'd seen everything. Watched his students surpass him in the moment that mattered most. Not my student anymore, he whispered. The oxygen mask muffled his words, but Sarah heard them clearly. My equal. Sarah moved to his side, took his hand with her good one. Your family. Bull's smile was weak but genuine. My family. They flew through the storm toward base, toward medical care, toward survival that had seemed impossible 10 minutes ago. The helicopter rocked and swayed, but the pilots held it steady. Professional aviators doing impossible things because that's what the mission required. Sarah kept hold of Bull's hand, felt his pulse. Weak, irregular, but present. He was still here, still fighting, still refusing to quit even as cancer and exhaustion and age tried to drag him down. Stay with me, Sarah said quietly. Don't you dare die on this helicopter. Not after everything. Bull's eyes opened. Wasn't planning on it, still have things to teach you. You've taught me enough. Never enough. That's the point of legacy. It never ends, just gets passed forward. The base appeared through the storm, lights cutting through rain and darkness. The helicopters descended, landed hard but safe on the tarmac. Medical teams were already waiting. Stretchers, equipment, organized chaos. They pulled Bull out first, rushed him toward the trauma center. Sarah tried to follow, but her legs wouldn't work. The adrenaline was gone. Nothing left but pain and exhaustion and the crash that came after impossible things. Hawk caught her as she collapsed. I got you, ma'am. Medical's here. Sarah let them carry her, let them work, let herself be vulnerable for the first time in 4 years. Because she'd learned something on that mountain. Learned it in blood and rock and rifle fire. Strength wasn't doing everything alone. Strength was knowing when to let others help carry the weight. They put her on a stretcher, started IV lines, checked vitals, professional voices calling out numbers that probably meant something important. Sarah didn't care about the numbers. She cared about one thing. Bull, she said. Where's Bull? In surgery, ma'am, a medic said. They're doing everything they can. Everything. Sarah had learned that everything wasn't always enough. David had gotten everything. The best medical care, the most skilled surgeons, everything except more time. She closed her eyes, let them wheel her towards surgery, let the darkness take her. But before it did, she made a promise. To herself, to David, to Bull. If he lived, she'd make sure his lessons continued. If he died, she'd make sure they never ended. That's what legacy meant. That's what family did. They saved each other. Or they made sure the saving continued even after death. Base hospital was white ceiling tiles and antiseptic smell and the quiet beeping of machines that measured life in regular intervals. Sarah woke to all of it, disoriented, painful, but alive. Her left arm was in a cast from shoulder to wrist. Her ribs were wrapped tight enough to make breathing difficult. IV lines ran into her right arm, feeding her fluids and pain medication and whatever else doctors decided wounded soldiers needed. A nurse appeared, efficient, kind. Easy, Captain. You've been out for 16 hours, multiple fractures, internal bleeding, severe dehydration. The doctors say you're lucky to be alive. Lucky, Sarah almost laughed. Lucky was surviving when 42 people tried to kill you. Lucky was having a dying man climb down a crumbling mountain to save you. Lucky was learning to trust just in time for that trust to save your life. Colonel Harrison, Sarah said. Her voice was rough, dry. Where is he? Stable, barely. The surgery went as well as could be expected. But Captain, you should know. I know, cancer, stage 3, 6 months, he told me. The nurse nodded. He's asking for you when you're ready. Sarah tried to sit up. Pain flared through every nerve. She pushed through it anyway. I'm ready now. Captain, you need to rest. I need to see him. Help me up or get out of my way. The nurse recognized the tone, the voice of someone who would rip out their own IV lines and drag themselves down the hall if necessary. She helped Sarah into a wheelchair instead. Bull's room was 3 doors down. Might as well have been 3 miles. Every movement hurt. Every breath was fire. Sarah made herself move anyway. He was lying in bed, oxygen tubes, more IV lines, monitors tracking the slow decline of a man who'd survived 4 decades of war only to be killed by his own cells. But his eyes were open, clear, focused on the door when Sarah wheeled in. You look like hell, he said. His voice was weak, but the humor was intact. Feel worse. Sarah wheeled closer. You shouldn't have come down that mountain. Your position was stable. Your position was falling apart. Had to make sure David's sister survived. I told you to stop feeling guilty about David. Not guilt anymore. Pride. Bull's smile was genuine. You became exactly what he knew you could be. Better than I trained you. Better than I ever was. Sarah took his hand, the one without IV lines. I had a good teacher. You had a stubborn old man who wouldn't let you quit on yourself. Bull coughed, wet, painful. Sarah, I need to tell you something about David. We've talked about David. Not everything, there's more. Things I didn't show you before. Bull gestured to the bedside table, a manila envelope, worn, old, David's handwriting on the outside. Sarah's hands shook as she picked it up. What is this letter he wrote? Made me promise to give it to you after you made your first impossible shot. Figured 42 kills qualified. Sarah opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. 3 pages, David's careful handwriting, dated 4 years ago, the day before his last mission. Her vision blurred, but she made herself read. Sorry if you're reading this, something happened to me, but don't be angry. I chose this. Bull Harrison is the best instructor in the military. Gruff, annoying, stubborn. You'll hate him at first. Let him teach you anyway. He'll save your life from yourself. You'll want to be alone after I'm gone. Don't. The walls that keep pain out also keep love out. Bull will feel guilty about my death. Let that guilt drive him to train you. You're going to try to do everything alone like always. Don't. The best operators work in teams. The best warriors have families. You need Bull's wisdom. You need partners who have your back. Accepting help isn't weakness, it's strength. I asked Bull to make you Storm, not the call sign, the real thing. Storm is wind, rain, lightning, and thunder working together. That's what I want for you, to be part of something bigger. When you make that impossible shot, and you will, remember you didn't do it alone. You did it with Bull's training, with your team's support, with everyone who believed in you. That's the secret. That's what makes impossible possible. Connection, trust, family. I know you're angry. I know you blame yourself. You couldn't have stopped me from enlisting. This was my choice, my way of mattering. But you matter too. Promise me you'll let people in. You'll accept Bull's teaching. You'll find your family. Promise you'll become Storm, the force of nature that protects others, that works with others. I won't be there to see it, Not dying hurts. Missing your life does. Missing watching you become the legend I know you'll be. But I'll still be with you in every lesson Bull teaches, in every partner who has your back, in every impossible shot you make. I'll be there, part of the storm. Take care of Bull. Take care of your team. Take care of yourself. You deserve to survive. You deserve to be happy. I love you, Sarah. I'm proud of you. I always was. I always will be. Your little brother, David. P.S. Make my sister Storm, not a call sign, a promise that she'll never face darkness alone, that she'll always have family. That's how legacy works. We pass it forward, from me to Bull, from Bull to you, from you to whoever comes next. The storm never stops. It just finds new winds to carry it. Sarah finished reading. Tears were streaming down her face. She didn't try to stop them, didn't try to hide them. David had known. 4 years ago, he'd known exactly what would happen, had known she'd shut down, had known Bull would feel guilty, had known they'd need each other. He'd orchestrated everything, from beyond the grave, a little brother still protecting his big sister even after death. He set this all up, Sarah said. Her voice was thick with emotion. He knew you'd train me, knew we'd help each other. Bull nodded. Smart kid, smarter than both of us. He saw what we'd need and made sure we had it. Sarah looked at the letter again, at David's handwriting, at the love and wisdom and sacrifice compressed into 3 pages. I thought I was doing this for revenge, she said quietly. Thought I was making them pay for killing my brother. Maybe at first, but David wanted better for you. He wanted you to protect, to save, to be part of something. I was so angry for so long. Anger's not wrong, it's just incomplete. You channeled it into purpose, into skill, into saving 8 lives on that mountain. That's what David wanted, not revenge, protection. Sarah folded the letter carefully, put it back in the envelope, placed it over her heart. Thank you, she said, for keeping your promise to him, for not giving up on me even when I pushed you away. Thank you for letting me keep it, for becoming exactly what he knew you could be. Bull's eyes were closing, exhaustion pulling him down. For teaching this old man that legacy isn't about what you do, it's about who you create. Sarah stayed in his room until he fell asleep, watched his chest rise and fall, counted the breaths, made silent promises to a sleeping man who'd saved her life twice, once on a mountain, once in the deeper darkness of isolation and rage. She'd make sure his lessons continued. She'd make sure David's sacrifice meant something. She'd make sure the storm never stopped, just found new winds to carry it forward. That's what family did, blood or chosen. It didn't matter, they carried each other forward, into tomorrow, into legacy, into the impossible made possible through connection and trust and love. 2 weeks later, they held the medal ceremony on the base parade ground. Full formal, dress uniforms, command staff, press, the entire spectacle of military recognition. Sarah stood in formation, her left arm still in a cast, her ribs taped tight, standing straight despite the pain because that's what the ceremony demanded. Bull sat in a wheelchair beside her, too weak to stand for long, but present, stubbornly present. Reeves and his team stood in formation behind them, professional, proud, brothers who'd walked through fire together. General Matheson presided, Distinguished Service Cross for Bull, Silver Star for Sarah, Bronze Stars for the SEAL team. He read the citations, spoke of valor, of courage, of sacrifice, the usual words that tried to capture impossible things in military language. Then he went off script. These warriors exemplify 3 generations of American excellence, Matheson said. His voice carried across the parade ground. Colonel Harrison, Cold War operations, Desert Storm, 2 decades training the finest snipers this nation has produced. 47 students over 40 years. 0 killed in action until 1. Matheson looked at Sarah. Private First Class David Mitchell, who died protecting 23 civilians, whose sacrifice brought us Captain Sarah Mitchell, who honored her brother by becoming Storm, by saving 8 lives in conditions that made victory impossible. Sarah's throat was tight. She stared straight ahead, military bearing, professional discipline. But inside, she was breaking and healing at the same time. And the SEAL team who embodied our most sacred principle, we leave no one behind. Even when extraction is impossible, even when every tactical calculation says retreat, we go back for our people. Matheson pinned the medals, one by one. When he reached Sarah, he paused. Captain Mitchell, is there anything you'd like to say? Protocol said no. Accept the medal, salute, return to formation. That was the script. Sarah broke script. Sir, permission to speak. Granted. Sarah turned to face the formation, to face the people gathered, to face the moment. This medal belongs to 3 men, she said. Her voice was steady, clear. My brother David, who taught me why we serve. Colonel Harrison, who taught me how to serve. And every operator who refused to let me face the darkness alone. She looked at Bull. You kept your promise to my brother. You made me part of something bigger than myself. You taught me that the best warriors aren't the ones who never need help. They're the ones who know when to accept it. She looked at Reeves and his team. You came back for me when every tactical decision said leave. You risked your lives for someone you barely knew. That's what family does. That's what warriors do. She faced the crowd again. I spent 4 years alone. I thought isolation was strength. I was wrong. Strength is connection. Strength is trust. Strength is knowing that when you fall, someone will come back for you. Her voice caught, but she pushed through. My brother knew that. Colonel Harrison taught me that. The SEAL team proved that. This medal isn't mine, it's ours. Every person who refuses to let another warrior fight alone. Silence fell over the parade ground. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then everyone. Standing ovation. For warriors who embodied principles that couldn't be captured in medals or citations. Bull struggled to stand. Sarah helped him. They stood together. Teacher and student. Mentor and protector. Family. The applause continued. Sarah let herself feel it. Let herself accept it. Let herself be part of something instead of apart from everything. After the ceremony, Bull pulled her aside. That was good. What you said. David would be proud. He set this up. He knew I'd need you. Knew you'd need me. Smart kid. Smarter than both of us. Bull paused, looked uncomfortable. Sarah, I need to ask you something. Anything. He handed her a key. My ranch, 300 acres, hill country. I want you to have it. Bull, I can't. You can, you will. Turn it into a training ground. Teach others what I taught you, what David wanted you to learn. Sarah looked at the key, at the weight of it, the responsibility. I'm not ready. You're more ready than I was at your age, and you won't be alone. You'll have students, partners, family. Bull's eyes were intense. Promise me, when I'm gone, you'll pass it forward. You'll teach others. You'll make sure the storm continues. Sarah closed her hand around the key. I promise. Good, because that's legacy. Not what we do, who we create, who we teach, who we lift up. Bull started coughing, hard, wet, blood on his lips. Sarah called for medics. They came fast, took him back to the hospital, back to the slow decline that cancer demanded. Sarah watched them wheel him away. The key was heavy in her hand, heavier than metal had any right to be. It was responsibility, legacy, the weight of promises made to dying men. She'd carry it, she'd honor it. She'd make sure Bull's 40 years of wisdom didn't die with him. That's what family did. 6 weeks later, Bull's condition deteriorated rapidly. The cancer accelerated by mission stress, by altitude, by the physical demands of climbing mountains when your body was already failing. He insisted on going home, to the ranch, to the place he'd built over 40 years. Sarah arranged it, set up hospice care, made sure he had everything he needed. But what he needed most wasn't medical. It was purpose. Bull insisted on teaching. Young snipers came to the ranch. Students who'd heard the legends, who wanted to learn from the Cold War operator who'd made impossible shots and trained 0 casualties. Sarah ran the sessions. Bull observed from a chair. Oxygen tubes, blankets despite the Texas heat, dying but refusing to quit. 4 students that first week. 2 women, 2 men, talented, all eager, all respectful of the man who'd shaped a generation of warriors. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez was the standout. 23 years old, natural shooter, reminded Sarah of herself at that age. Before David died, before the walls went up, Bull saw it too. That one's special, he said quietly to Sarah. Like you, train her right. Sarah worked with Amy on impossible shot scenarios, long range, high wind, unstable positions, the kind of shots that separated good from legendary. Bull called out corrections. Even weak and dying, his mind was sharp. His eye was perfect. His wisdom was intact. You're tensing, he told Amy. Breath control. That's the foundation. Master breathing and everything else follows. Amy adjusted, made the shot. Perfect hit at 1,800 meters. Better, Bull said, but not excellent. Excellent is when you can do it under fire, under stress, under conditions that make success impossible. He looked at Sarah. Show her. Sarah set up an impossible scenario. 2,200 meters, wind gusting 40 knots, moving target, time limit. Everything wrong. She made the shot anyway. Muscle memory, training, years of turning impossible into routine. The students stared. Amy's eyes were wide. How practice, Sarah said, in a teacher who refused to let me quit when I wanted to. Bull smiled, closed his eyes. That's legacy. Passing forward what was passed to you. At night after the students left, Sarah sat with Bull. They talked about everything, about David, about Berlin, about Desert Storm and Bosnia and Afghanistan, and all the places Bull had been, all the things he'd seen. I'm proud of you, Bull said one night. His voice was barely a whisper. You became what David wanted, what I tried to teach. You became Storm. I'm still learning. We're always learning, that's the point. The moment you think you know everything is the moment you get killed. Bull paused, gathered strength. Sarah, I need to tell you something about David, about me, about why I came on that mission. You said you wanted to keep me alive. That was true, but not complete. Bull pulled out another envelope. Your brother wrote this 3 months before he died. Sent it to me. I've carried it ever since. Sarah took the envelope, opened it. Inside was a medical report, Bull's medical report, from 4 years ago, stage 1 lung cancer, treatable, survivable. I was sick when David died, Bull said quietly. Not stage 3, stage 1. Doctors said I had good odds, but I retired anyway. Gave up. Let the cancer grow because I didn't care enough to fight it. Sarah looked at him. Why? Because I was tired. 40 years of war, 40 years of training kids to kill, 40 years of wondering if it mattered. Then David died and I knew. I'd failed. Failed at the one thing that mattered, keeping my students alive. Bull's eyes were wet. I let the cancer grow. Punishment, penance, whatever you want to call it. I deserved to die for letting David die. That's insane. Probably, but then I got David's letter, the one he sent you, the one where he asked me to train you, to make sure you survived, to give you family. Bull looked at her. That's when I started fighting. That's when I got treatment. That's when I decided I had something left to live for. Sarah understood. You fought the cancer for me. For 4 years, made it manageable. Not cured, but stable. Then that mission came up. Impossible position, impossible shot, and I knew. This was it. This was how I'd keep my promise, even if it killed me. Bull. I'm not sorry. That mission bought you 3 more years of training, taught you to trust, gave you family, made you into exactly what David wanted. Bull smiled. Worth it. Every second, every cough, every drop of blood. Worth it to see you become Storm. Sarah was crying. She didn't try to hide it. You're an idiot. A stubborn, self-sacrificing idiot. Yes, but I'm your idiot. Your teacher. Your family. Bull took her hand. Sarah, I don't have long. Days, maybe. And I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't let my death be the end. Let it be the beginning of the training ground, of the next generation of the Storm continuing. His grip tightened despite his weakness. Teach Amy. Teach others. Pass forward everything I gave you, everything David wanted for you. I promise. And Sarah, don't be alone anymore. You've learned to trust. Don't forget that lesson. Keep your family close. Keep your team closer. That's how we survive. That's how legacy works. I know, you taught me that. Good, then my work is done. Bull died 3 days later, peacefully, in his sleep, surrounded by photos of his students, of his operations, of 40 years of service compressed into a ranch house in Texas Hill Country. Sarah was there, holding his hand, feeling the moment his pulse stopped, the moment a legend became memory. She didn't cry, not then. There would be time for tears later. In that moment, she just sat with him, said goodbye to the man who'd saved her life by refusing to let her stay broken. Thank you, she whispered, for everything, for David, for me, for teaching me that family isn't blood. It's choice, and I choose you. I'll always choose you. The funeral was full military honors, flag-draped coffin, 21-gun salute. Taps played across the hill country. 47 snipers Bull had trained, all present, all alive. 0 casualties in 40 years, except one, and that one had brought him Sarah, had given him purpose in his final years, had let him die knowing his legacy would continue. Sarah delivered the eulogy. She wore her dress uniform, the silver star on her chest, David's photo in her pocket, Bull's Berlin scope in her hands. Colonel William Harrison saved my life twice, she said. Her voice carried across the assembled crowd. Once on a mountain in Texas, once in a darker place inside myself. My brother asked him to train me. He did more. He taught me that strength isn't isolation. It's connection. That excellence isn't perfection. It's perseverance. That legacy isn't what you accomplish. It's who you lift up. She paused, gathered herself. I'm Storm because Bull taught me to be. But more importantly, I'm family because he showed me how. Colonel Harrison made one final impossible shot. He hit the heart of a woman who thought she had none left. And in doing so, he ensured that his lessons will never die. Sarah raised the Berlin scope. This scope made an impossible shot in 1987, changed the Cold War, saved lives, created legend. Bull gave it to me, not to keep, to pass forward, to the next generation, to the students who come after. She looked at the assembled crowd, at Amy, at the SEAL team, at everyone who'd been touched by Bull's teaching. Colonel Harrison's work isn't finished. It continues through every sniper he trained, every student who learned his lessons, every warrior who refuses to leave family behind. Rest easy, Bull. We'll take it from here. After the ceremony, Sarah stood between 2 headstones. David's on the left, Bull's on the right. 2 men who'd shaped her life, who'd made her into Storm. She placed Bull's Berlin scope on his grave. Symbolic. His lesson passed to her. His impossible made into her possible. You did it, she said to both graves, to both men. You made me what you wanted, a protector, a teacher, a family member. Thank you for everything. She turned to leave. Amy was waiting, young, eager, talented, the next generation. Ma'am, Amy said, what now? Sarah looked at the training ground, at the ranch that was now hers, at the responsibility and legacy and promise. Now we teach, Sarah said. We pass it forward. We make sure no warrior faces the darkness alone. That's what Bull did. That's what David wanted. That's what Storm means. I'm ready. Good, because the storm never stops. It just finds new winds to carry it. 1 year later, Harrison Legacy Training Ground was operational. 15 students, mixed gender, mixed background, all talented, all eager to learn from the woman who'd made impossible shots and refused to quit. Sarah ran advanced scenarios, impossible conditions, extreme ranges, the kind of training that separated competent from legendary. Amy was her star pupil, natural talent refined by discipline and teaching. She was making shots at 2,200 meters. 2,500, approaching Sarah's level. You're tensing, Sarah said, echoing Bull's words, passing forward his wisdom. Breath control first. Everything else follows. Amy adjusted, made the shot. Perfect hit. Better, but not excellent. Want to know the difference? Yes, ma'am. Excellent is when you can do it under fire, under stress, under impossible conditions, when lives depend on your precision. Sarah paused. I have a mission, real operation. SEAL team needs overwatch. Difficult position. Are you ready? Amy's eyes went wide. Ma'am, I don't know if... I didn't ask if you knew. I asked if you were ready. Yes, ma'am, I'm ready. Good, because you're not going alone. That was Bull's most important lesson. We never send family alone. I'm going with you. I'll be your spotter, your backup, your safety net. Like Bull was for you. Exactly like that. That's how legacy works. We pass it forward. From Bull to me, from me to you, from you to whoever comes next. They prepped for the mission. Sarah teaching, Amy learning, the cycle continuing. The storm finding new winds. In the training building, photos covered the wall. Cold War Berlin, Desert Storm, Bosnia, Afghanistan, Iraq. 40 years of operations, 47 students, 0 casualties. Bull's collection. Now Sarah's responsibility. Soon Amy's inheritance. Sarah stood in front of the photos. David and Bull smiled at her from their frames. Two ghosts who'd shaped everything she'd become. Still here, she said to them. To the memory, to the legacy. Still fighting, still teaching, still making sure no one faces it alone. She touched David's photo. You knew, little brother? 4 years ago, you knew exactly what I'd need. Thank you for setting it up, for sending me Bull, for making sure I'd have family. She touched Bull's photo. You kept your promise, made me Storm. Taught me that impossible is just another word for not yet. Thank you for not giving up on me. Even when I pushed you away, Amy appeared in the doorway. Ma'am, are you okay? Sarah wiped her eyes. Yeah, just talking to family. They must be proud of what you've built here. They better be. I learned from the best. Sarah looked at Amy, at the future, at the storm continuing. Ready for that mission brief? Yes, ma'am. They walked to the operations center together, teacher and student, mentor and protector. The cycle David had started, Bull had refined, Sarah was continuing. On the wall, a plaque read, Harrison Legacy Training Ground, where no warrior stands alone. Below it, 3 names, David Mitchell, William Harrison, Sarah Mitchell. Past, present, future. The storm had arrived 4 years ago as grief and rage, had been refined into purpose and precision, was now being passed forward to the next generation. Amy would learn, would grow, would one day teach her own students, and they'd teach theirs, on and on, forever forward. That's what legacy meant, not what you did, who you created, who you taught, who you lifted up. Sarah Mitchell call sign. Storm had learned that lesson, had paid for it in blood and pain and loss, had bought it with 42 kills and 1 impossible RPG shot and the willingness to finally let people in. Now she was teaching it, passing it forward, making sure David's sacrifice and Bull's wisdom would never die. The storm never stopped. It just found new winds to carry it, new voices to speak its thunder, new hands to bring its lightning. Sarah was Storm, me would be Storm, whoever came next would be Storm. Not a call sign, a promise, that no warrior would ever face the darkness alone, that family meant choice, not blood, that impossible was just another word for not yet. That's what David had wanted, what Bull had taught, what Sarah had become. And now, standing in the training ground, built on their legacy, Sarah Mitchell understood the final truth. She wasn't just Storm, she was the keeper of storms, the teacher of thunder, the guardian of lightning. And she'd spend the rest of her life making sure that when warriors needed cover, when soldiers needed protection, when the impossible became necessary, Storm would arrive. Sometimes in the form of precision rifle fire, sometimes in the form of wisdom and training, sometimes in the form of refusal to quit even when every calculation said surrender, but always in the form of family, chosen and cherished and worth dying for. That's what it meant to be Storm. That's what David and Bull had taught her. That's what she'd pass forward until her last breath. The storm never stopped, and neither would she.